Hi, I'm Kyra. I main Brewmaster Monk, and I'm going to be looking at the newly announced, as of today, Shadowlands class changes preview. It's pretty early in the alpha, so things are definitely going to change, but there's a lot of big stuff in here for Brewmaster Monks, and I kind of wanted to talk about it, so here I am. So basically, I'm going to go through one by one all of the changes, and afterwards, I will actually talk about Mistweaver and Windwalker, but the focus of this video is on Brewmaster. So baseline for all monk specs, we're all getting Expel Harm, Fortify and Brew, Spinning Crane Kick, and Touch of Death. All of these are like really powerful abilities right now. Windwalker, there are a few traits that are geared towards Spinning Crane Kick. Touch of Death isn't really that strong on live servers right now in terms of like comparing it to how it used to be. And that's kind of important for later on. All specs getting Fortify and Brew isn't a huge change because every spec more or less has the talent to get Fortifying Brew, or at least a version of it, the PvP talent, which you're not going to see play in PvE, but at least you can use it in the overworld, stuff like that. So being able to have this as a defensive cooldown as a Windwalker in PvE content is pretty huge. Expel Harm, the ability to grab in all of your orbs, no matter what spec you are, is pretty amazing. There's a positioning problem that sort of happens with Windwalker in trying to get your orbs. If you want to focus on like getting some emergency heals and you're in a Mythic Plus dungeon and you've just killed a pull or something, this isn't game changing. This isn't probably going to like radically alter your gameplay or anything. But every spec having Spinning Crane Kick is pretty huge, depending on how strong Spinning Crane Kick ends up being in Shadowlands. It's pretty integral to both other specs that aren't Brewmaster. So Brewmaster having this will definitely be interesting and might improve their damage potential, because right now we have Keg Smash, we have Breath of Fire, and those two are basically our AoE damage. Keg Smash is usually on top. I don't know. I'm really kind of pumped about this change. Having another option to use in AoE as a Brewmaster that works a little differently in terms of cooldown compared to Keg Smash and Breath of Fire is pretty cool. So this is also a pretty huge change. Every single monk spec will get their talented celestial. So for Brewmaster, that's news out, the Black Ox. I don't really run it ever because I'm pretty sure it does a baseline taunt, which is, I guess, good to bail you out of situations. I'm really interested to see what the play is around Brewmasters with Nuzao, if it still has that taunt, because it could function sort of the way that trees function right now, and we're not actually giving up a talent on the same row to take it, which is a huge thing. Yu'lon the Jade Serpent, another cooldown for Mistweaver. Suen the White Tiger, a super common choice for Windwalker monks. So this is like a pretty big gameplay change. It kind of gives Brewmaster an offensive cooldown that may not necessarily have any defensive benefit, which is like weird and also really cool. Brewmaster, unless you're running certain builds, doesn't do huge damage, and ignoring corruption, which we won't have in Shadowlands. This will definitely be a cool thing to start the expansion off with. So specifically going into the Brewmaster changes, we have, first of all, we can choose between one-handed and two-handed weapons again. This is cool. I like this. Options are good, in my opinion, and most people's opinions. That's not a very weird opinion to have. But it can complicate gearing situations a little bit, and it just gives us more decisions to make. It also allows us, this goes hand in hand with the Windwalker change, where they can also use two-handed weapons in addition to one-handed weapons which means as a Brewmaster, if you're focusing on gearing up your Brewmaster, you don't have to use, like, at the start of this expansion, I was using like 290 fist weapons to do like world quest content when I had like a 3 something two-hander that I just couldn't use in Windwalker. So I like that a lot. This right here, Shuffle, is huge. It is massive. Shuffle was a pretty huge part of the Brewmaster toolkit back when it first started. I think Shuffle was originally a channel where all of the attacks against you during that channel would be staggered, but it was changed to be something that you maintain with Blackout Kick. Just a buff that gives you 20% parry and 20% stagger. You could maintain that Shuffle if you were able to Blackout Kick or Blackout Strike often enough. Seeing as Cake Smash, Spinning Crane Kick, and Blackout Strike will be causing Shuffle, I don't think that this is going to cause Brewmaster to favor haste or anything weird. It might end up impacting later when classes start really scaling because there's a lot of stat budget, a few patches into Shadowlands, but this is really awesome because right now the way stagger works is you take damage to the face and then you don't take damage to the face until later by not doing anything, which isn't super engaging. I always get teased for playing Brewmaster because people are like, your active mitigation is completely passive. Number one, it's not, obviously, because you actually have to have your Iron Skin Brew up. And Purify is like, that's a skill thing. Like, if you do good Purifies, you will be an asset. And if you do bad Purifies, you will run out of brews or you will take too much damage. I love that they are bringing Shuffle back because, I mean, I wasn't like jonesing for more buttons to press. And that, I mean, this isn't actually giving us more buttons to press, but like just there's more to stagger now, which is really cool to me. I really like the play style of stagger. I like the gameplay of doing good Purifies. And I think Shuffle is going to increase your ability to play around your stagger and play around your Purifies. And a lot of the changes that they have for Brewmaster Monk specifically are kind of all about this. Obviously, like, duh, it's the central part of Brewmaster stagger, but it's like seriously playing into timing your Purifies to maximize something, or timing your abilities to maximize your stagger to maximize your ability to Purify. So yeah, I don't know. This is a great change. This is super awesome. I'm super glad we're getting Shuffle back. It's passive. It's not like a new button to press. I'm pretty sure. I mean, the way it's worded, it could be a button to press, but I don't know. I'm excited about this. And then we have Celestial Brew, which absorbs damage based on the imbiber's attack power. Now, depending on how attack power is calculated in Shadowlands, I don't know if anything will change around that. But I think this might end up further increasing our love of the main stat. Right now we love agility because it gives us many different benefits, including survivability benefits. And this is a huge survivability cooldown. It's basically dampen harm based on your character power, which is awesome. There's a lot of like content that you kind of have to build your like trinkets around. You have to make sure you have the right externals because our only cooldown, defensive cooldown right now that's not talented is Fortifying Brew, and that's on a 5-minute cooldown, so you can't exactly rely on that. I guess you can sort of every other pull in Mythic Plus, but I mean it's just not like a lot of other tanks that have these really strong defensive on-demand cooldowns that are available to them. This is really cool. I wonder what the damage breakdown the absorb is going to be able to take, if this is just flat based on physical and magical, like it doesn't matter what kind of damage source it is, and if if it does absorb physical and magical damage equally, we are going to be really strong against magic damage because we will be able to absorb it. We will have an absorb. We'll also be pretty strong on physical damage pulls depending on how the coefficient of this absorb ends up working out. If it's not huge, that's kind of dampen harm isn't huge. I switch between bob and weave and dampen harm all the time, but I do notice dampen harm when I'm using it because it makes me survive things that I otherwise wouldn't. That's why I'm running it in those situations. So it could end up serving the same purpose as dampen harm. And if we still have dampen harm as a talent, that would be like we would have a lot more defensive plays to make, which is pretty cool. I just love options. Clash causes both the monk and their target bull rush each other. I think that's a that's a grammar fail. And at the epicenter of the conflict, root their opponent for a short duration. So the way I'm reading this is the target that you bull rush, and you will obviously meet in between you and the target. And only that target will be rooted for a small amount of time. This is sort of like a warrior intervene. I like this. I kind of feel like I played warrior for a really long time, so not having a charge into combat is kind of weird for me. Just kind of rolling in and having rushing Jade Wind up and Keg smashing at the right time. That's just kind of feels a little haphazard. So I don't know. Maybe this will be cool. Maybe that root will be powerful, but it's not like we're, I actually hadn't thought of this. This is a displacement, so we could kick things with Clash, which is cool. So now we'll have paralysis. We'll be able to incap a cast. We'll be able to actually kick a cast. We'll be able to leg sweep a cast, and we'll be able to clash a cast. So we can actually lock down a target for a while, which is pretty cool. That might actually be a whole rotation of kicks that we could solo. So that's actually a little more powerful than I was imagining in my head, which is cool. I'm really excited for that. Celestial Flames talent. Drinking brews has a moderate chance to grant Celestial Flames, which slightly increases Breath of Fire's damage reduction and spreads its periodic damage effect to targets struck with Spinning Crane Kick. This is really cool because you're always going to be drinking brew because Iron Skin Brew counts as a brew that you are drinking. Tracking this buff will just add a dimension of play that makes Breath of Fire and Spinning Crane Kick interact where otherwise they wouldn't. And that's cool. I like that. It could be really powerful. It could be absolute dog shit. I have no idea. But that seems pretty fun. Exploding Keg immolates enemies on impact and blinding them for a brief period of time. Also grammar fail, but that's okay. So immolate, I'm assuming that that's some kind of fire damage dot. And the blind, that's pretty powerful. This is another disruption talent. So in Mythic Plus, this will be hugely powerful. You'll be able to disrupt an entire pull that could potentially have multiple casters if your leg sweep is down. That gives you 2 chances to disrupt an entire Mythic Plus pull, which is really cool. Completely useless in raids, so oh well. This, at least, Celestial Flames has a use in like an ad fight, depending on how the damage likes to spread, if there's a target cap or anything. Yeah, so I talked about this earlier, but Invoke New Zao, the Black Ox, is now baseline. And this is the huge thing I wanted to talk about with New Zao. Since we're guaranteed to have this damage cooldown, we're going to be using this. And the fact that it deals additional damage based on staggered damage purified, right now on live servers, you can take the Conflict and Strife Major to gain access to Hot Trub, which basically does this. It does a little Breath of Fire type attack whenever you purify, and if your purify is bigger, the damage will be bigger. This basically adds that play into your damage cooldown, and we're not going to have essences in Shadowlands. So this is really cool. I'm really glad that we have another source of damage, especially something that is based on the skill play of your class. So you can skill your way to good damage, which is, the damage could be terrible, but potentially you could skill your way to good damage, and that's cool. Touch of Death being with Brewmaster Monk and clearing remaining stagger damage. This is insane for Mythic Plus. This is, certain affixes that exist right now where you like to bring the entire pack down at the same time, this is insanely powerful for, because you get to those like second 15, second 20 in your pull, and these ads become more dangerous because you have less things to deal with the ads, you have less things to disrupt the ads, and this will, it's a huge get out of free card for Brewmaster. Just like the less health than the monk, I'm sure we're going to be able to write a weak aura that figures out whether or not your target has less health than you do right now. This is kind of a little difficult, especially at the start of the expansion, because Brewmaster monks tend to not really have a ton of health. So it's going to be kind of hard to land these things, but it's sort of like playing Formless Void right now with the added benefit of clearing all your stagger damage. That's crazy. That's so good. It's so good because you don't want to purify under a massive amount of stagger damage. Like if your dot's crazy, you're purifying to do these additional damage things. But if you're like under 120%, 100%, and like your dot is manageable, you don't want to purify because you want to maintain your Iron Skin Brew. And towards the end of the pull, this is just gonna make the last half of a pull a lot more manageable, I feel like. I also think it's awesome that we have an insta-kill execute. Like right now in live, I have I don't know how much health I have, like between 400 and 500k, and that's like a few seconds of coordinated group damage, and that's just gone with Touch of Death. That's really cool. I'm really happy about that. So there's no huge rework on how Brewmaster works. Stagger still, as far as we know, works the way that it does. Iron Skin Brew still works the way that it does, as far as we know. And we just get a ton of options to play around the existing system, which is basically the best news that we could have possibly gotten. This is great. Brewmaster has a ton of good choices. The numbers could end up being terrible, and we could just end up being terrible and squishy, especially after the stagger coefficient nerf and the life orb, I forget, the healing sphere bug fix, kind of put us underneath Warrior and underneath Vengeance Demon Hunter right now. So we'll see how the start of the expansion plays out, but more options, more potential for cool things to happen. So yeah, as a Brewmaster monk that kind of does some intermediate content, I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty excited for this. Super quick, I did kind of want to talk about the other two specs. If you want to go now, that's fine. I stream every Wednesday and Thursday. Depends on when, but usually like 7 o'clock Eastern time to 11:30 Eastern time. Those are my two main stream days right now. So I'll put a link down in the description if you want to see any current Brewmaster content. Fingers crossed for the beta. That's not going to happen, but yeah. So Mistweaver Invoculon the Jade Serpent is now baseline. It's just cool that we all get these cooldowns to play around. There's not a whole lot to say about this. The current Mistweaver style of play is a really high haste rising sun kick build. Like, you just use that button and that's you refresh your hots on your targets, maintain your throughput just by dealing damage. This, I mean, having Touch of Death is really cool. This is kind of harder for Mistweaver Monk to play around, obviously, with a little bit less health to work with. The healing spheres for the allies, that's a lot of healing potentially. I wonder how it's going to work out, like what the range of being able to pick up these healing spheres are, and if people are going to be aware of it, because I know that like a really old fist weaving build relied on the people around you making sure that they were cognizant of the fact that healing spheres were on the ground and going to pick them up. So yeah, that's kind of group play that potentially needs to be played around here. If you're like a Mistweaver with a Brewmaster, if there's an option, you kind of want the Brewmaster using Touch of Death, but depending on how powerful this is. Yeah, so Shiji, the Red Crane talent, being completely reworked. Right now it's sort of like a small healing damage cooldown. That's really only good if you're pulling like super big packs, which you don't really do if you're doing like really hard content in Mythic Plus. I don't think you use this in Raid at all. I don't know for sure. I'm pretty sure you don't. But this kind of focuses on the Mistweaver being enabled to deal damage, which is cool. That's kind of how it works now, but this is like way more explicit, way more targeted towards that play style. It seems like they kind of get that people who play Mistweaver prefer like a Fistweaver style or something like that, so that's pretty cool. Windwalker, not a ton of changes. You're getting an Azurite power as a passive talent. Zuen is not a talent anymore, and you get Chi from the Chi spheres that Touch of Death gives you, which is cool. That's good. Otherwise, not super impactful changes. I'm sure we'll see a lot more, but yeah, I mean, to summarize all this very long video up, these changes are very fun seeming. I'm pretty excited about it. Let me know and like if anybody watches this video, let me know what you think. I love talking about tank potential. It's going to be a huge question mark for a lot of different classes based on the Covenant abilities in Shadowlands. So it's going to be a lot to talk about in the next 6 months, or maybe even a year with everything that's going on. But yeah, thanks for listening to my extremely boring voice. Yeah, check me out on stream if you want. I'll probably be posting some VODs from actual content on this channel. That's kind of probably what I imagine to be my focus on this channel. So yeah, later.